the weird nostalgia people have for like Charlotte Hornets like starter jackets and Georgetown Hoyas t-shirts.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
This is the Pat Mayo Experience, brought to you by Underdog. It's time for the Week 15 Power Poll Plus. Talk about some Juan Soto, college football playoffs, Underdog plays for Monday Night Football. Always hit the time codes and go around. You smash the like while you're here as well. Jake, the Chiefs did it again, man. I thought they were out of new ways to win. This is how they do it. Doink.
The doink was the best part about it. Like, it seriously doinked it in, too. I was like, wow, it's finally not going to happen. And I saw, I think it was Steve Palazzolo, however you say his last name. He was saying they've been in 5 where the final play is a field goal to win it in either direction. And only 3 of the 5 were them actually kicking the field goals. 2 of them have been on the other side where the other team has failed to kick the field goals. And, yeah, it's ridiculous at this point. I mean, but they keep finding ways to win. So, I mean, how do you keep it? Are you going to have them in your tier 1 this week, or are you going to keep them out still?
I got rid of the tiers for this week. I just want to talk about teams. Okay. I have a list of 8 teams I think can win the Super Bowl. And one of them I actually think, I have 8. And I think one is actually kind of fraudulent and won't win the Super Bowl, but their defense is good enough that maybe they can carry them. So here's the order I have. The top 8 remaining in the NFL. Detroit, Buffalo, and Philly stay at 2 and 3. Kansas City moves from 7 to 4. Minnesota, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. Gun to my head, if I had to bet on it, I don't think that Pittsburgh's going to win the Super Bowl.
No. And, so wait, who's the frauds then?
Pittsburgh.
Okay. I'm never going to count them out, especially if George Pickens is healthy. But I could see that. I would still take, we talked about this, I think, last week. I would still take the Ravens straight up against the Steelers, maybe even in Pittsburgh, honestly. So, yeah, I think I'd have the same 8, honestly. When you said frauds, I thought you were maybe going to make a case to put the Broncos in the top 8.
No, hey, it's not even that I think that Pittsburgh's fraudulent. It's just I have them as a part of the teams that can win the Super Bowl. It's just everything really needs to break so favorably for them. In terms of just playing like lockdown defense. I worry. I guess it wouldn't happen if you have KC, Buffalo, if they fall out of the division lead, which they're big favorites to do right now. If they lose to Baltimore coming up and just like stumble somewhere down the stretch, and then like they have to go to Houston. Weirdly enough, I think that Houston could beat them in Houston. I'd want to play if I'm Pittsburgh, I want to play every game outside.
That makes sense. Also, I don't know if I'm that worried about Houston unless they found some magic during the bye, because the issue is just too big with the offensive line. Like, I don't know how you fix this, because a week off or not, it's not. And I know everybody's coming for Slowick, and deservedly so, because he hasn't adjusted to what's been different this year. At least McDaniel adjusted the Dolphins offense, and he changed. He's like, look, this isn't working anymore because of how teams are treating us, so let's adjust. And it's been working to a degree, not as well as things were working last year. But the Texans haven't adjusted for, even when Nico Collins is back. They've been trying to get the ball out semi-quick, but that's not even working with C.J. Stroud. I just don't know where. Like, again, maybe the week off. Maybe Slowick has a whole new game plan coming out of the bye. But you can't fix the offensive line, and I think that's just going to kill them.
Oh, I agree with you. If Pittsburgh ends up going to Houston, if that's the 5-4 matchup, which, again, it doesn't look like it's going to be. Pittsburgh is pretty close to either the 2 or 3 seed right now and being locked into that. It's just, Pittsburgh would be, a 2.5-point favorite in Houston, probably? Like, it would be a field goal spread, more than likely.
Yes. Okay, well, I agree with you going on that. Like, can it happen? Yes, it still can. They would have to, go basically 1 and 3. But if it flip-flopped and somehow they ended up 4 and 5 to go to Baltimore, I think the spread would be much larger, to your point.
Yeah. If it was Baltimore in Houston, I think Baltimore is a bigger favorite in Houston than Pittsburgh is.
Oh, no, I was even saying if Pittsburgh somehow ended up going to Baltimore. If they flipped.
Oh, boy.
Lost the division.
That'd be a tough. See, I don't know if that can happen at this point, because Pittsburgh and Baltimore both have the tiebreak over the Chargers. And now with the Chargers' loss again, that they're pretty much locked into that 6 seed as long as they beat Denver coming up.
Yeah, but couldn't Baltimore and Pittsburgh somehow end up at 4 and 5? Because they were 4 and 5 last week.
I mean, that just assumes. I guess that would assume that the Texans win out, and I just didn't even that didn't even compute for me.
That's fair.
Of course, they're not doing that. Like the rest of the season. I mean, yes, the Texans could play themselves up, but they go home Dolphins, at Chiefs, home Ravens, at Titans. Like they could be 1-3.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. So, yeah, but I was just thinking about the Steelers' schedule being pretty tough too. So I was just playing that out. But anyway, point being, yeah, I pretty much agree. I can't even make a case for anybody else, honestly. I'm with you in the same top 8.
Yeah, so
okay. Your team.
My
Which
team?
Great bet, by the way. I'm so glad I went together with you on this, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning that division. You don't think they could play this? Like they would have to play the perfect game all 3 times, but like if they played their perfect game, you don't think there's a chance that they could just surprise people?
I mentioned this to Cust on the Sunday night show, is that when you take a look at the NFC, what was the stat? I have it pulled up here. The Lions, Packers, and Vikings are 28-3 against the rest of the NFL outside of the division so far this year. And they haven't lost a game outside of the division, except for they haven't lost a game not played against each other since October.
That's insane.
But Tampa has beaten Detroit. They've beaten Washington. They've beaten Philadelphia. They're like a weird kryptonite team for all the good teams in the NFC. So if they could just get themselves in there, it doesn't seem likely considering they should have lost to Carolina. They could have. I don't want to say that if O'Connell doesn't get hurt, they lose to Vegas, but that was a real game. That after jumping up 14-0, they had nothing left in the tank. They've just played horrible football, but they keep winning these games. And now they get the Chargers this week. And Herbert's probably going to play, but he's banged up for sure.
He's banged up. That entire team, I mean, without Ladd McConkey, they took a step back. Actually, without J.K. Dobbins, this hasn't looked like the same offense just because Gus Edwards is limited. Vidal is nice, but I think overrated by the fantasy community and what the truth of what he can do to the offense. So I think the Chargers are not the Chargers we were talking about 3 weeks ago. Like, they can't. There's no way they get knocked out of the playoffs. It's slim, but, I mean, if they did, it wouldn't shock me. I'll put it that way.
What, if the Chargers failed to make the playoffs?
Yeah, they'd have to lose out, and then
Indy would basically have to win out, too.
Or Miami.
Or Miami's
That'd
not
be the
winning.
only way.
Miami's not winning out. I'm just so sick of hearing about Miami and how, they're still in the hunt. Like, they're not good.
No, I'm not disagreeing that Miami's not going to win out. Actually, the Chargers could go 1-3. They could win out, or the Chargers could lose out, and the Colts or Dolphins could go 3-1. I'm just saying it's a slim chance, but if the Chargers end up 8-9, the Colts and Dolphins only have 7 losses right now, and if they end up 9-8, and one of them goes undefeated, which is very, very, very unlikely. I'm just saying the way that the Chargers are playing, I think there's more of a likelihood that they lose 1 of 3 or even go 0-4 than there is the chance of the Colts or the Dolphins winning out.
Sure, but this was the tough part of the Chargers schedule. They had this 4-game stretch where they just played good teams over and over. And it's not like the Bucs are a layup, but they are a significant step down from the teams that the Chargers have played the last month. And when you end with like the Patriots in Vegas, you're probably looking pretty good.
You should, unless Herbert's out by then.
Yeah, if Herbert goes down, they're screwed. Absolutely. And they could lose all these games. I mean, Herbert was able to come back in. I assume he's going to be, quote unquote, he's going to play.
What happened to my boy Heineke? Like losing some hair over there.
I mean,
getting stressed out on the sidelines.
He's been in the league, 1,000 years now? What is he, 58 years old?
I don't know. I just didn't see that. I missed the part where we started losing all that hair when they were showing him warm up on the sidelines. I was like, oh, my boy Heineke's lost some hair.
So right now, does Pittsburgh have do they have the tie break over Buffalo? No, they don't.
No, because Buffalo, I'm actually looking at it right now.
Strength of schedule.
Strength
goes
of
to the
victory.
Bills. Yeah. But that could change because they're 7-2 in both of them are 7-2 in conference right now.
2 in the conference.
This is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, this is huge for the Chiefs. Like, I moved the Chiefs back up to number 4, and it's weird. The way that they're currently playing, I think probably wins them the Super Bowl. The issue with them, like a lot of the other teams, is if they actually fall behind in one of these games, I don't know what they do because they have no big plays.
They don't, and I think I don't remember who it was, but I think this is the most sacks Mahomes has had, through the 13 games. I think it's the most he's had in a season already in years. This offense, this is why we keep saying like something changes at some point and maybe they turn it on. But I'm with you in the fact, like, I mean, if we want to even pull fancy into this conversation for the wide receivers, it's like there's nobody you can trust. Yeah, sure, Hopkins has a good game here, but then disappears, and then Hopkins has a good game and then disappears, and then saves his day with a touchdown for fantasy purposes. But even that, you see, it's like the inconsistency there. Kelsey's not Kelsey. Maybe Kelsey's the big answer. Maybe that's what it is. He's gonna wake up in week 18 and be like, you know what, I just coasted through the season, and now they're a threat on offense to be able to catch up if somebody like the Bills pulls a game like they did yesterday. But I'm with you. As it stands right now, even watching that game yesterday where, again, they had a chance to lose, I don't know how their offense does exactly the scenario you put out, is that if they do fall behind and it's to a team like the Bills, the Ravens, hell, it's the Super Bowl against the Lions, or like, I just don't know how they play catch up.
And that's where I'm at right now. But the way that they're currently playing isn't all that dissimilar to how they won in the playoffs last year. Just
yeah.
What do they have? I saw they have 8 more drives of 10-plus plays than any other team in the league right now. Like, if they just want to milk, hey, give them 7 minutes left on the clock. Oh, they can just milk that down to 0 and win the game because they convert 54% of their third downs. And we talked about the Texans a little bit, and part of the issue with the Texans offense is that C.J. Stroud and that offense converted all those 3 and 8s last year. Now they just don't do it. Kansas City actually converts them at a it doesn't seem like a sustainable rate, but they're doing it, and it's Mahomes, so I just kind of believe it.
I'm curious. I'm gonna see if I pull that up later today of like the stat of 3rd and 7 conversions or more, like a big third down. What the percentage is
for Kansas City?
Like yeah. What's the league average most years, and then what Kansas City's at this year?
I would say it's probably double whatever the league average is historically.
I'm curious. I'll see if I could pull it up while we're doing this, because now I'm super curious. Yeah. Now you made me super curious.
Do you feel like we've given Minnesota not enough respect here? Because Vikings fans, again, are mad all over the place that they're not considered like a top flight Super Bowl contender.
Don't throw me. Don't throw the we on us. I've had them in tier 2 the entire season. I'm the one campaigning to keep them in tier 2.
Yeah.
But don't you have them in tier 2 at this point? Like, how much higher do you want to put them?
No,
to the people asking.
Hey, do you know they can still get the 1 seed, Jake? They're great. Did you know that?
Like, it's any, like, the big question comes down to, you've already seen it this year, and no, it hasn't even been close to the inconsistency of past years and the Sam Darnold career. But any given week, we've already seen it happen this year. Any given week, Sam Darnold can go duck on us. And that's the issue. That's why. It's because, is Patrick Mahomes ever going to go duck? No. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen? No. Like, that's Lamar Jackson? No. Like, that's just the biggest thing, is it just comes down to the quarterback. Yes, the offense terrific. Yes, the defense is still playing terrific ball, and they have plenty of weapons everywhere you look. But it comes down to when you're in the playoffs and you still need to rely on the quarterback. Like, go through those 8 teams that you just mentioned, and if we were ranking quarterbacks on who we trust, would we be like 7th or 8th of that list?
Yeah, who do you trust more, Russell Wilson or Sam Darnold?
That was the only one I was going to throw out. And honestly, this year, it depends on what the game is. If the game is close, I trust Russell Wilson. If they actually do need to play catch-up, I would actually trust Sam Darnold in that situation.
I agree with you, especially with the playmakers that he has. That's what's kind of carrying him along. Good offense, good offensive playmakers. And they came out this weekend. They were just like, yeah, we're not re-signing Sam Darnold. We'll roll with J.J. McCarthy in week 4 of next year, whatever it might be, or just go find some other random backup to play quarterback for us.
I'm super curious, like, if they actually hold to that, because there's already been talk that J.J. McCarthy might be ready for week 1. Like,
yeah, but you know what you don't do? Like, Darnold's gonna command money from someone. Now, the best
in multiple years.
Yeah, and why would you ever give that to him? Like, we just saw Atlanta giving the money to Kirk Cousins. Maybe, and yes, he's a bit older. He's coming off an Achilles injury. Maybe he's not 100% right now. But maybe some of his past performance, like when he was leading the league in passing last year, was more of a product of this offense and this coaching staff rather than Kirk Cousins being all of a sudden amazing at 35.
It's possible, but you don't have the injuries with the Kirk Cousins. Where do you think Sam Darnold quarterbacks next year? I'm trying to think of teams, like where he would go.
Well, I would have said it was the Giants, but the Giants and Raiders look like they're going to pick 1-2, so they'll probably just draft quarterbacks.
It wouldn't be surprising, though, if depending on who doesn't get there, like you would say the Jets, but we've done that. I'm trying to think of, like, if you don't get Sanders or Ward, you know how I feel about the rest of this draft class, and the rest of this draft class for me is find somebody potentially hold over for a year, which I think is why Darnold and Winston and all these other quarterbacks will find jobs at least for 1 year. As you mentioned, Darnold's probably getting a multi-year contract, but I wonder if one of those teams with like drafts like Carson Beck. So you got to think of the teams that would be doing that. The Jets, but again, we've done the Darnold situation, so who else? It'd be kind of in those range of those kind of teams.
It could be Darnold to the Browns if Jameis leaves. Like, I could see Jameis on the Jets.
That's actually came to mind.
Jameis on the Jets. That's a match made in heaven, by the way.
My tweet, like, it was such an innocuous tweet for me. Like, I was like, hey, Jameis Winston's going to turn Garrett Wilson into that top 5 wide receiver we wanted in fantasy next year. No, like, implying exactly that. And it blew, 5,000 likes. I was like, it was just a throwaway tweet. I'm like, I don't know why it got so much love. Maybe Jets fans are just so tired with Aaron Rodgers. But I actually think that's a perfect spot for Jameis Winston.
And looking at it, the only, like, besides Vegas and the Giants, I guess Derek Carr broke his hand. If they decide to, if there's an out where they can get rid of Derek Carr,
Saints.
Maybe that's a spot for Darnold.
I could see the Saints would be in play. Who else? The Titans.
I don't think the Titans, though. I think the Titans would either draft someone or just run Levis back out there.
See, this is the problem. I was talking to my buddy last night. This is why I don't understand why the NFL does it backwards. It's the only sport that has the draft after free agency. It's the only one that does this. And I think that's why. Because the Titans, if the draft was first, might be like, oh, who's there for us? And maybe somehow Carson Beck falls to the second, third round, or they fall in love with Newsmeyer and he's there in the second and third. Because I actually was comparing that draft to with the Malik Willis draft, where it's going to be one of those ones where the top 2 go, and then it's not they get drafted in the first, and then we're sitting there and it's like maybe not even the second, and all of a sudden like they start flying off the board in the third and the fourth. I'm saying all this to say is like a team like the Titans could be like, oh, we didn't have to spend our first. We got our potential solution, so let's find the 1 year stopgap, which could be Will Levis. But because free agency is first, like, I don't know, they might do that. They might be like, look, let's not risk what could potentially not be on the board. Let's just go sign Sam Darnold because he's actually got some similarities to Will Levis anyway, and he's much better. Because the Will Levis experience should be over.
It should be. I mean, did you watch how much of the Jags-Titans game did you watch?
A lot, because I was really frustrated that they were keeping in everything 5 to 10 yards and not looking at Nick Westbrook-Akina the entire time because I had to start him in one league instead of Malik Neighbors, and it should have went the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, you could have played Malik Neighbors. It turned out he was fine. He played all the snaps.
Yeah, he was fine. He does, and he still got up gimpy at times, but I do not understand. So the Calvin Ridley was the obvious. I actually had Calvin Ridley pushing wide receiver 1 because of that matchup and what he does in man coverage and all that type of stuff. But still, it was Will Levis, middle of the field, 5 yards, 10 yards, 5 yards. I'm like, holy crap, just look downfield once. And that was just clearly their game plan. I don't know why. I don't know why they're so afraid of the Jaguars defense to not give Will Levis 3 seconds to look downfield. And yes, they probably could have had that touchdown towards the end. Not trying to say oh, cool, it would have been fine for Westbrook-Akina, but I do not understand what that game plan was.
It was I don't know what was going on with the Jags in the first half, because I had a bunch of, shout out, the underdog winner from the weekend. The 3-legger won, the 5-legger lost because of overtime in the Miami and Jets game. If the Jets just kick a field goal at the end of regulation, Devontae Adams doesn't step out of bounds for no reason. I get you want to run a sideline play, keep your ass in bounds and run that clock down so they can't do anything. That would have been a bit more helpful in that circumstance, at least to both your chances of winning, because you lost the game, the Jets, and my chance of cashing a huge Achane under on his receptions. But then, of course, he has 3 catches after that happens, and that's the end of the big ticket that would have paid, I think it was 21-1 or something. But the 3 main plays end up hitting. One of them was Brian Thomas, higher receiving yards, and it was he has 0 at the half. What is going on here? They weren't even looking at him in the first half.
They weren't at all, and that really comes down to, there's a lot of it's like Mac Jones anyway, is that you don't trust him in any given game. I did find the number on the 3rd down conversion, by the way.
All right, hit me.
So I'm going to go up, because 6 yards, they do lead the league, 41%. The league average is 27%. Bucks are second. They also lead the league in 7 to go, which, let me go back to it because I can just tick it up one each. So they actually lead at 7 yards at 34.7%. The league average is 24.3. Second, the Ravens at 31.9. Here's what's interesting. You go to 8 yards to go, It's the Bills. They fall to second behind the Bills, 32-30 lead, average 22. But this is the crazy one I wanted to give you. 3rd and 9, the Chiefs fall not all the way. They fall down to 5. 3rd and 9, Washington Commanders, 30% of the time the league averages 20%.
It's pretty good.
That was the one that shocked me. So you're right about the Chiefs, that they're right there. They're actually the leaders in 2 of them and second in the other. But I was just shocked to see that the Commanders at 3rd and 9, almost a third of the time.
So when you go down that list, like how many, so do all of the teams, like if we consider Patrick Mahomes a mobile quarterback, which I would, he can run for it if he wants to, or at least extend some of these plays. Are they all mobile quarterbacks who convert these 3rd and longs?
No. If I go back to 3rd and 7, it's Chiefs, Ravens, Vikings, Bucks, Dolphins, Lions, Eagles, Bills, Commanders, Steelers, top 10.
All right, but I would say that Baker runs for first downs.
He does, but I would say like 50%. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
But the top 4, like
60%
even
of those.
Darnold, like Darnold has that rushing ability and he's able to take off.
I wonder, oh, well, there you go. Rush percentage on those plays. 18, 10, 11, 16. Buccaneers, there he goes. Buccaneers are 16. Eagles, 30%.
That makes sense.
On those.
Well,
Yeah.
because the
Commanders,
but
18.6.
So, but the Eagles, so that includes both the 3rd downs that they pick up and don't pick up as a part of that rush percentage?
Yes.
So for the Eagles, that actually makes way more sense because they might just arbitrarily run with Barkley on 3rd and long, knowing that they're just going to go for it on 4th down and run again with the tush push. Like if they can get themselves to 4th and 1, 4th and 2, then they can just go for it.
Yeah, so like, and that kind of ties in because you might go for it with the Commanders have this year. They're at 18.6. So like run with them or Jaden Daniels takes off.
Yeah. It's just the ability to
I
extend.
think your point about the Chiefs, 18% is actually a little surprising.
Yeah. I don't know how often that's Patrick Mahomes taking off versus them actually running the ball, but like they're no stranger to going for it on 4th down either.
You know what? I want to scroll to the bottom and see what I knew it.
Jags?
It's funny. Like, no, I was going to say a team that runs a lot that just doesn't do it. And the Cardinals 31.6% of the time run, and they only convert 14%.
That's good. That's a strong number from the Arizona Cardinals. They fell off the face of the earth, by the way.
Yeah, they did. Again, the Seahawks have their number.
The moment the Cust called Kyler Murray an MVP candidate and then threw his support behind the Cardinals, they beat the Jets, and then they haven't won a game since.
Which, how perfect is that? They beat the Jets on top of it. It's like not only they fell off, but they also beat the Jets.
Yeah, that would make a ton of sense to me. If we think about the actually, I just want to go back to Darnold for a second. Like, if you had to compare Minnesota to Green Bay, and maybe it's just a product of how we perceive Love versus Darnold. We don't have the history with Love, although Jordan Love is kind of Sam Darnold-y in a way. Like, he'll make some bad decisions on you and try to throw you out of a game. But like in my mind, like I know I have Green Bay ranked a spot behind Minnesota coming off the loss. Like those 3 teams are very close to each other with Detroit just ahead. Am I wrong for having more faith in Love than Darnold when it comes down to the playoffs?
Wrong is tough to say. I actually think that's funny. We were going to come back to that. The other quarterback, when you said Russell Wilson versus Darnold, and I said I probably trust Darnold, especially if they play catch up. I think at this year, I would trust the play of Darnold. Now, I mean, you can make excuses for Jordan Love and say, look at the wide receivers. I mean, how many games has he actually had, his entire crew all together? And I say that not to be like, oh, he doesn't still have weapons. It's just the consistency of it's also he's losing roles. Like Dobbs is the role safety blanket. Then he loses him. Watson was his big play. He lost him earlier. Jaden Reed missed a brief amount of time. So it's kind of like it would be one thing if you like lost Watson, put in Wicks, which they did that one time. But like, that was just like a 1-for-1. Okay, cool. You keep rolling along. But then Tucker Kraft even got banged up for a brief amount of time. But it's just been like all over the map where you can't even get consistency. So yes, I agree with you is that Jordan Love makes some major mistakes himself. Actually, you know, like Jordan Love's play feels a little bit of like the dangerous, and not to use his term, Baker Mayfield. That's kind of how he feels.
I like that call. And like when I think about Darnold and the run that with the team that they have constructed, all the special teams is, in the bottom third of the league right now for Minnesota. They kind of remind me of that Ravens team that won the Super Bowl with Flacco at quarterback. That I could see Darnold going on a 4-game run. Very unlikely, where he's just like lights out. It's like, oh my God, he just played 4 ceiling games in a row and they stomped everyone.
I think that's a really good comparison too, especially with the defense. I mean, it's obviously not as elite as that Ravens defense, but it's a very good comparison.
And per DVOA, Minnesota is still number 1 in defense right now, although their run defense does not look as good as it did. Like, there was a point in the season where it's like, just don't, like, fantasy-wise, do not start a running back against Minnesota. They're not going to do anything. But, like, Algier and Bijan had a ton of success against them on the ground. Who did they play 2 weeks ago? I just remember them getting run on there, too. And maybe they're just selling out to make sure that they stop the pass, and that's a product of some of that. Where even in the Bills-Rams game, like they made a concerted effort to try to stop Kyron Williams from going off on first down. That led them to playing in zone defense, and Stafford just picking them apart.
Yeah, and I think that's so. I think it comes back to it wasn't 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago. It was the Bears, and they didn't do much on the ground against them. When was the last team that was it the Cardinals? Was it James Conner went? No. Yeah, Kyler Murray and James Conner had a big day against them. That was
right. The Cardinals' offense looked good against Minnesota. They just couldn't get into the end zone. So it's been 2 weeks in a row where it's been like I think that the Falcons ended up outgaining Minnesota in the game on Sunday. It's just Cousins when it was on the line just kind of threw it to the other team.
I mean, that's the one thing about it, watching that game was like knowing that Kirk Cousins is stunk and that this was a bad matchup for Kirk Cousins. I was actually surprised that he played, honestly, his best game in a while, except for the interceptions. That as soon as it's like, man, they got a drive going here and they're not having any problems moving the ball. Kirk Cousins looks the best he has since the middle of the season, and then interception, as you said. So I don't know if you call it the best game, but I mean the best game without the interceptions. Your point does stand. I think that this comes down to the whole thing as we've been talking about, though, is the Vikings defense is a problem. Is the Vikings defense a shutdown, you don't do anything against them defense? No, they still can be beat.
Yes, and we'll see what happens when they play some of these upper echelon teams. But sort of Pittsburgh's path and Minnesota's path to the Super Bowl, I think, are very similar, although Minnesota is just overall a better team. But they don't have Mike Tomlin, and he curses people, so that helps.
What's the current matchup right now? They're Packers, don't they? No, wait, 5-6. So they have Tampa Bay right now.
They get Tampa. I mean, how much more? They're probably favorites in Tampa Bay, and they probably beat Tampa Bay. But how much are they praying that just like if they end up with the 5 seed, that they can just slot Atlanta back into that spot? I think they would prefer that.
I think they would too. I'm seeing actually would take Minnesota over Seattle too, if they can. That almost feels like, do you drop back? And you like when people try to do that in fantasy, I'll lose the division just so I can go to Seattle and avoid that.
It's the best feeling when clothes fit good and look good, and you can comfortably wear them all day long. And that's exactly how I feel about my clothing from Doers. These are the most comfortable pants I've ever owned, but I wear my Doers as often as possible. I got 4 pairs right now. My wife, let me tell you, it's working. It's working for me with Doer, and they have styles that can be worn all year round. Their stretch performance denim and lifestyle apparel is built for doing. You know I love my Doers, and now's the time to get your own because they've got up to 50% off these incredibly comfortable pants, and this is the best time to upgrade your wardrobe before the new year and find some amazing holiday gifts. Don't wait. These items will sell out fast, so go to shopdoer.com/PME to get these great deals before they're gone. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/PME. Shopdoer.com/PME. Introducing the TGL presented by SoFi, golf's newest league live on ESPN and ESPN+. It's sharp and it's electric. How is it sharp? How is it electric? Picture this. 2 hours of hammer-dropping, overtime-forcing, playoff on-the-line golf with 24 of the best players from the PGA Tour, like Tiger and Rory and more, split into 6 teams: Atlanta, Boston, Jupiter, LA, New York, the Bay. This isn't your average Sunday pickup game. To learn more, visit tglgolf.com and tune in to the inaugural season beginning January 7th. Keep up. It's golf. Let's talk about the NFC West for a second then. With Seattle up there, everyone's still kind of live in the division in a weird way, because if you take a look at Seattle's schedule to end the season, they play the Rams in week 18, which could be for the division in the final week of the season. But they have like 3 pretty tough games here. They're home Packers, home Vikings, then at the Bears. And at the Bears in week 17 in the frigid cold is not going to be a fun game. Like, that's a game the Bears could win.
It's definitely a game the Bears can win. I wouldn't be shocked if 9 wins gets to, like, if the Seahawks lost out and still won the division at 8-9, I wouldn't be shocked, because you have 2 wins or 2 non-losses up on the Cardinals and 49ers. The Rams are at 7-6, but the 49ers are still hanging around, which is good for fantasy for people that are hoping Brock Purdy wasn't going to get shut down yet. If they beat the Rams, but they still have Dolphins, Lions, and then at Cardinals, which means the Cardinals are in the mix. The Cardinals actually have potentially the easiest schedule, because they have the Patriots, Panthers, at Rams if they can pull that off, and then 49ers, hopefully, maybe for their sake, everybody's shut down because they can't keep a damn person on the field every single. That team is cursed or something.
I saw that Guerrero is probably a sprained foot. Like, is that something you can play through or not? I didn't see an update on it.
It would have to be like the most mild kind, especially because they have the short week.
So, like, dump your fab on Patrick Taylor?
I mean, sure. I mean, they could activate Abanaconda. This is the one where, like, if we knew this last week when we went crazy for Guerrero and Guerrero got caught up in that mess, and let's just say Guerrero got hurt with Mason and Christian McCaffrey, I would be like, this isn't dump my entire fab on Patrick Taylor type of situation. This is sprinkle some on him, sprinkle some on Abanaconda. Hell, they have Keyshawn Vaughn on the roster too. This just could be Deebo Samuel getting 6 carries and 2 other people being involved, and then Juszczyk a couple at the back. Like, I think it's going to turn into a complete mess this week.
See, we saw
if there is no Guerrero.
We can say that, but every time that this season at least, that the 49ers have lined up someone new in the backfield, it's been their backfield.
It has been, but I don't think this is that scenario. This is somebody coming off the practice squad for the second time and newly signed players, and then again Juszczyk in the mix. This isn't somebody that's been with the team the entire season like the other players. So
the Niners go Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals to end the season.
That's probably the roughest of anybody in that division. Seahawks. Them two have the toughest ones. The Cardinals and the Rams definitively have easier schedules.
So maybe the play is just the Rams.
It would be fun. I mean, of all the teams, right now, if you had to pick between the 4 teams, who's the scariest? I would say it's the Rams.
But how is it? Now, let me ask you this. The Rams can't block against anyone, but against Buffalo, a team with a legitimately good pass rush, can't put a finger on Matt Stafford.
I don't know they can't block anyone. It's not Texans bad.
It's pretty bad. Like, to watch them against the Saints and Patriots the 2 weeks before, they couldn't block anyone.
Maybe that's something to look into. The extra defender. How many times did the Bills bring an extra defender? 5 or even 6. That'd be interesting to look up.
I honestly, I don't know. I do not have you have the numbers available.
I know. I'm gonna True Media has the numbers available. I just keep pulling them up through there.
But 3 of 4 division games left, and one of them, the other game is at the Jets, which Cust will tell you, well, of course the Jets have to be favored by like 20 points because they have the best players in the league, and then they'll lose by 20, and it just happens every week. I'm excited for them to lose to the Jags this week.
So it wouldn't shock me, honestly. I don't think they're going to lose to the Jags, but it wouldn't shock me.
And we didn't talk about Philly at all. I don't know if they decided to sleepwalk through that game, but they looked discombobulated against Carolina. Like, their offense was non-functioning.
It was not the same, and A.J. Brown just completely disappeared. Devontae Smith at the end. This just feels like an off game. I kind of said that, too, when I did my recap podcast for people like, oh, my God, A.J. Brown, quiet 2 weeks in a row. Like, these things happen. And look, there's a reason that we don't have undefeated teams in the NFL. Everybody gets got at some point. Just an off game. I want to continue to give the Carolina Panthers entire organization for these players actually playing better, but I'm not scared of them. And I don't think they're a middle of the pack team yet, but they've been playing better over the past couple of weeks. Some credit to, like, they're not just a cakewalk over at this point, like the Giants and Raiders. So, off week. I'm not putting too much. I would still have the Eagles in tier one. Like, my tier 1, if we were doing tier 1 today, I think if we were still doing that, I would say there's 4 for me that feel like the next level down. Like to go back to that question I asked you, I wouldn't put the Chiefs back on it just because they won again. Like I trust the Lions, Eagles, even with the loss, Bills and Ravens more than I do the Chiefs, Vikings, Packers, Steelers, and that's everybody, right?
Yeah, I would
That's
go
eight.
I'd go like Lions, Buffalo, Philly, top 3, then like Chiefs, Vikings, Green Bay, Steelers, Baltimore is like tier 2 for me.
I still feel like even with I just feel like Baltimore's still there.
Baltimore seems like they can get got though. I know that any of these teams can get got, but they've been got a few times now.
I mean, you're not wrong. I just,
But
like,
there's
I
like
kinda feel like they're
but-
just too good.
But there's a huge gap between them. Like we know, like their upside is that's why they're on the can win the Super Bowl tier, and why they're like I have the Chargers still at number 9 right now, like with Denver at number 10, Seattle, Washington, Tampa, Houston. Like Baltimore's so much better than that collection of teams, but they're also not on the level of. I know they beat the shit out of the Bills earlier this year, but let them play again. I think the Bills handle them pretty well. Although maybe not because the Bills don't play defense anymore.
That's possible. I'm looking right now. It's definitely not blitz percentage the reason, because the Eagles and the Saints both times when they played the Rams were bottom 5, rush like blitzing like 10% of the time. Actually, this past week was the highest. I mean, relatively, the Bills had a whopping 11%, over 10%, 10%. So it's not blitzing. That's the problem of like why they couldn't get to them. I'm so interested by this now.
Well, there was the stat that came out about Stafford versus zone defense, Stafford versus man defense, and like has like a minus EPA against man-to-man coverage, but he's like way like very very much near the top of the league versus zone, and all the Bills did was play zone.
Yeah, that's very similar to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a very similar minus EPA. I'm super positive. Like I think he was like 5th best because I threw that out last week. The other one I was looking at was pressure with 5.
Well, how much of the Kirk Cousins stats are just skewed by those 2 Tampa games?
It's possible. I mean, I would have to go back and pull those out and look at the difference between those.
It's just he has like 1,000 passing yards in those 2 games.
It's true. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm curious if you pull those out just for the rest of the schedule. So, real quick, to go back to not just the blitz thing, but the pressure with 5+ rushers, the Saints and the Eagles were both middle of the pack, and the Bills were actually only 25%, both being middle of the pack about 50% of the time pressure on the quarterback. The Bills rushing 5+ were only 25%. So, for whatever reason, they picked it up against the Bills better.
Interesting. Just maybe had a good game. Bills had a down game. Could just be that easy as well. Do you think that did Josh Allen strengthen his case for the MVP yesterday, or did it hurt him? Because I feel like it strengthened his case.
Oh, who's trying to say it hurt him?
No, just usually when a team loses, that hurts the front runner MVP candidate. But I don't think that it did. I think it helped him.
No, 100% it helped him. And, I've said that why are we saying not Lamar Jackson? But, I mean, at this point, if you told me they were tied, because we had this debate 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and I actually had Mike Florio, our good old buddy, I call him like our little brother, had him on, and we know he's a Bills fan, had him on the waiver show last week, and we briefly got into the MVP conversation. Of course, he wants to root for Josh Allen. And I said, I kind of think it's a toss-up. I think Lamar Jackson is just we don't want to vote for him again. So even saying that, Pat, if it was a tie, and part of it's Lamar Jackson didn't play, but Josh Allen clearly pulled ahead with that game, even with the loss. There's no question about it.
I do think that Lamar's a good bet right now if you wanted to take it. So to look at the market, I think there are 3 guys that not necessarily that I would vote for MVP, but I think there are 3 guys who can win it at this point in the season. Unless Darnold continues to throw 300 yards a game, 3 touchdowns, and Minnesota gets the 1 seed, then maybe Darnold does win it. He's 50-1 right now. But Allen's minus 400, so that's up from minus 250 a week ago. So he was enhanced in the betting market by that. Barkley's plus 450, and then Lamar is 14-1. To win MVP. All it takes, like as we've seen the past couple of years, if you just play ball out in prime time and someone stumbles somewhere else, like those prime time games in the minds of the voters mean so much more.
You're not wrong. And I think now that he's that much of a long bet, I think that's interesting. The problem is They don't have no. I just pulled it up. The Ravens don't have any primetime games unless they shift the Browns one.
No, they have the
final week.
but they have the island games in those like weird weeks, don't they? Like they have
No,
they have Steelers on like a Saturday or something like that.
Oh, is that what it is? They
Yeah.
got this. They have yeah, they do have the Saturday one, and then they have I forgot you have Christmas one. So you're right. They actually have two in a row, even though they're 4:00 games.
So they're going to be games that everyone sees. Like just it shouldn't make a difference, but it does make a
Well,
difference.
if you have Netflix.
Yeah.
And Netflix doesn't crap the bed like they did. What was it that they crapped the bed, the boxing thing?
Yeah, it was.
Oh my
it was
God.
Jake Paul and Tyson. Although I think that was I think the reason that they were able to get the good lease on the deal from Jerry Jones to do it at the stadium. Obviously, he made money on it, but I think it was Jerry Jones and the NFL owners doing this deal with Netflix being like, look. The first live thing that you broadcast cannot be this NFL game. You need to put something else out that you know people are going to watch so you can figure out what's wrong and fix it by the time that Christmas comes around because we can't have this happening.
I really hope that's the case. And you brought to mind when Apple did that with the baseball the year before, and they kind of did like the one playoff game, but like bonus coverage, like it wasn't the only place you could watch it, and it crapped the bed. I hope you're right, and that was the whole thing. Like we were kind of testing it to see because that was awful. That was the most miserable experience. You know, when people just gave up.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I went to bed. I was like, yeah, I'll wake up tomorrow and see what my gambling account is at after I win all this.
Oh, that's
Jake
why
Paul
I got
money.
through. I got all the people who went to bed and finally was able to get it going.
So Barkley's still plus 450. Here's why he's not going to be the MVP. Because
He's a running back.
Well, yes, but during the 2-minute drill in the first half yesterday, I think like the first 3 plays of the 2-minute drill for the Eagles, Barkley wasn't on the field. Gainwell was. So you know what a good strategy is? Here's the MVP. Let's not have him on the field. You can't play him in this circumstance. Like, what are we doing here?
I'm with you. I don't understand. And the reason that it was so funny to me is because there were 7 games on, so also had the red zone as the audio, so I could double check just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. And I love that Hansen tripped over not even knowing that it was Gainwell because that stupid 14. Just like, and I saw it too, and it was that dump off, that one that the first time it happened, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, and he was like, oh, it goes to Gainwell instead of Barkley. And I'm like, yeah, we all know. That sucks.
Yeah.
No, it's a running back. Like, even 2,000 yards. I know the first time 2,000 rushing yards since blah, 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 blah. It's a quarterback award. We know that. Like, if Christian McCaffrey, and granted, Lamar Jackson did go also nuclear in 2019, but Christian McCaffrey had way over 2,000 yards, had close to 20 touchdowns, and he couldn't win it. And again, I know that Lamar Jackson had an amazing season that year, but if Christian McCaffrey couldn't do it that year, Barkley's not going to do it this year.
There's still the outside chance. Obviously, he's second right now. He wouldn't get. I don't know how many of the voters would say, "Hey, a running back's just simply not getting my vote because the term is valuable to your team." That if you took Barkley off the Eagles, maybe they have one less win, maybe not. But if you took Allen off the Bills, they are probably not a playoff team.
Right.
So
if you took Allen and Lamar, you took Hurts off the Eagles, they're not winning.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that's true. I hadn't even considered that. I mean, we did see that when you take A.J. Brown off the field, or hell, you take Lane Johnson off the field for the Eagles, they're also not very good.
True. Weren't you one of them that made the case, or somebody did? I know somebody made the case that A.J. Brown has been more valuable this year than
that was
most
me.
anybody
Yeah,
in the game.
they're 2-2. Well, I guess they're 1-2 without A.J. Brown, but he got hurt like just very quickly into a game. So they're 2-2 without A.J. Brown.
Yeah. If you take Hurts off that quarterback and you slap in Kenny Pickett, they have a losing record.
Sure, but now you're going from like a very positive quarterback to a very negative quarterback. Like if you
right, but that's the backup.
Sure, but like if you even had a high end backup, someone who like if you had Minshew and Minshew was at full health and you put him on the Eagles, I mean we saw that they won a game once with that.
Derek Carr, maybe healthy Derek Carr.
Healthy Derek Carr. I think they'd be okay.
Yeah, he's always my fallback when you just think of like median replacement.
Yeah, who is the most average quarterback you could find? Slightly below average, but can start and run an offense. Yeah, Derek.
You see what happens when he tries to Superman.
Oh
That's this is above your level, dude.
Yeah. Just you're on the Saints, man. Just like chill out. What a horrible game that was. Except for the coach losing his mind on the sidelines, which was awesome.
Oh my God, and that kid was a rookie. Like,
and it got called back. The kick return touchdown.
I know. Like, going 8-0, like, dude, like, I'm all for getting, like, if you were that aggressive in a positive manner to fire up and it's like a huge play, and like on the other sideline, that was for Smith or Emir Smith Marset, and like you're like, yeah, we're getting fired up. Cool. Yelling at somebody for the negative, like, nah, that's too much for me.
No, I love it. I love it. It was too much for Alvin Kamara too, who was just like, "Hey, why don't you dial it back a little bit here, pal?"
That's what I'm saying.
I love it. People need to be held accountable by being yelled at publicly on the sidelines.
You would not. I know you, Pat. You would not handle being screamed at as an adult by another man like that.
Yeah, I would start screaming back, but I would be the one doing the screaming as well. It's the passion. Okay. The passion takes over in the moment. The emotion gets the best of you. All right, your New York Mets signed Juan Soto. You happy?
I have the hat on.
I see it.
100%. I know. Look, this is why I said as soon as they got rid of the Will Ponds, like, I know people hate it for baseball salary, but forget about the salary cap. That's a whole nother issue. This is why I like Steve Cohen. I don't know how he is as a human. I don't know how he made his money. I mean, I do, but I don't know really how he made his money. But I want owners in all sports. Like, I want NFL owners to do this. I want them to be fans and basically say, I'm going to do everything I can to give you a winning team. This is how owners should be.
There is nothing more satisfying, and I'm not even like a Yankees hater by any means, but to hear these Yankees fans complaining that Soto wouldn't take less money to play for the Yankees and took more money to play for the Mets is about the saddest thing I've ever heard.
It was so. Did you not see what I said last night? Is I should have included the Lakers in this, and I said I wonder how Cowboys and Lakers fans are taking the Soto signing, because it's all those front runners that somehow Cowboys fans like the Lakers and the Yankees, and they're all. I'm with you. They're all bitching about it, like, because it was like, oh, he didn't get the escalators. We gave him an extra year. It was $5 million less, and he didn't like. Yeah, I would. To be fair, I would have said the same thing if the Mets fans in the roles were reversed and they were the ones bitching about, oh, he took slightly more money to go to the Yankees. Why didn't he take our deal? Because it's just funny when you're in that position. Dodgers fans, same thing. Anybody in that position shouldn't be bitching about, oh, I can't believe he didn't take our less money.
Who's taking less money?
Nobody.
Tom Brady?
A handful. I was going to say, there's been a handful of players in all sports that, stay with the teams that they're with. They're championship contenders. I mean, It's most sports, but it's also not like this would have been one of the scenarios like if the Yankees had won the World Series and Soto was like, you know what, $5 million less, which actually was a little bit more because it was that extra year. But anyway, point being, if he was like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to stay here, we're going to run this back, you can't fault him. But it's not like he's taking $100 million less. That never happens.
No, not at all. Like, all things being equal, you're going to take. It's not like he was tied to the Yankees either. It's not like, oh, he's a Yankee for year. Life. Yeah. Well, just who's going to give me the most money? I'm going to go there. How about that?
And who was it? Was it Steinbrenner? Hal? One of them at the beginning of the season said he's going to free agency. We're not going to be able to sign him in season. Like, smart. What a shock.
Yeah, smart move. Probably should have explored that avenue a little bit more.
He should have at least thrown the $600 million at him and just seen if he could have possibly prevented this.
15 years seems like a lot of years. Throw that out.
But he's only going to be 41.
Yeah, only 41. Yeah.
Well, because here's why. I agree. When you add the math, it's 41, and he's probably not. I would almost guarantee he's not going to be worth $50 million a year when he's 38, 39, 40, 41, maybe even DHing at that point. But who's going to care if he brings them a World Series, and who's going to care about that at that point of his career if they've already won a World Series, or even if they just make the playoffs all the time, he has a Hall of Fame career. Nobody's really going to care at the end of it, especially somebody who has billions and doesn't care about money.
No, I agree with you. It reminds me of that Pujols contract when he went to the Cardinals. It's like, yeah, it's for how many? Or was it the Angels or the Cardinals? When he went to the Angels, it's like, yeah, he's going to be like decrepit because we don't even know how old Albert Pujols really is. He might be 65 at the end of this deal for all we know. And then I think he actually turned around his career a little bit, like in the second to last year of that contract. It was kind of okay again.
No, and I think the biggest one is you bring that up, and then I think the people are looking at the Mike Trout thing, and he's been injured a million times since, but that's what people look at least, and he's not a pitcher. So, and again, it's baseball. It's not money we have to worry about. Like if this was a salary cap, and even he did have this Cohen has this money, and you had to tie in that kind of contract, that'd be a completely different story. But it's baseball, and you don't have to worry about these things.
Yeah, I recall the Yankees doing this for 30 straight years, and now they're bitching about it.
Which is kind of fun.
It's kind of funny. Yeah, listen.
You know what else it is? This is the best weekend ever because you have the Yankees bitching about money and you have Alabama bitching about the playoffs because, we're the SEC.
Okay. So, as most viewers of this show know, I don't really pay that much attention to college football, but, I work in sports. I have a general understanding of what's going on. But I hear the complaints. It sounds like you have it. It's such entitled bitching from the SEC. Like, just win. How about you win some games, and then you'll be in?
This is the longest thing forever is that it's like, our 3 losses are better than your 1 loss because look at our conference and blah. Like,
look, when there's 4 teams, I kind of get that being like, fuck, we finished 6th and like we had 2 losses, but they were to the number 1 and 3 team.
Agreed.
Which also means you probably shouldn't be in the playoff. You lost to 2 of the teams that were in the playoff. But now that there's 12 teams, like, what were we going to say? Like, why even play the games? Be like, oh yeah, that's one of the arguments that I saw. It's like, well, Alabama has X amount of NFL pro-ready kids on it. It's like, okay, then why do we need to play the game? Let's just Madden evaluate each of the teams, and we'll rank them that way.
Like, you're 100% right. The only legitimate beef I think people could have is that I think the setup is a little off. Like, I think the buys should just be the top 4 teams. And then if you win your bracket or your conference that are automatically eligible, like Boise State, you should get in the 12 teams. Like, you should actually 100%, if you win your conference, have one of the 12 spots. But I still think the top 4 should be, those are the buys, because I think that's the bigger complaint, is that Boise State and Arizona State have buys. That if you want to go down that road, cool. The whole Alabama nonsense and all these SEC teams bitching and moaning, no. Shut the hell up and win your games, like you said.
Yeah, or just start your own league. Don't participate in the NCAA college football playoff system. Just have your own league.
Weren't they going to do that at one point?
I mean, I wouldn't be stunned. I wouldn't be stunned if they did it like in 2-3 years. If they don't like how this setup goes, that they merge with probably the Big Ten and just say screw it. Like, this is our league, and they just pay players, and like they don't even have to go to the school.
Well, and so that, like, to go back to your whole thing too, is like, that's the, everybody's like, well, look at who Notre Dame lost to. And I was like, okay, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma and what Oklahoma is this year, that's who Alabama lost to too. It's like, okay, cool. If you were like 1 game and they both had 1 loss and Alabama only lost to Oklahoma and Notre Dame lost to their jokers, Northern Illinois, cool. But we just had Michigan years ago losing to Appalachian State. Doesn't mean the teams still aren't good. And a lot of these teams, a lot of times, the biggest excuse that they have used in the past, even for SEC teams, is like, oh, well, they got tripped up in week 2. That's not as important as like what they've done for the rest of the season until it's on them. This is, like I said, this is the best weekend ever because Yankees and SEC fans are bitching and moaning. They're probably the same fans, and this is why it's great.
The one thing I don't understand, I mean, I understand because it's Notre Dame and they're just going to get special privileges along the way, that it doesn't really matter what they do. Any benefit of the doubt that can be given to Notre Dame will be given to Notre Dame. But so they're hosting Indiana in the 10-7 game. And are they better than Indiana? Right. Probably. But if you take a look at, if they're both 1-loss teams and one of the team's losses is to Ohio State, who's also in the playoffs, how is that team the lower seed?
Well, so there's multiple ways. Like, so I agree. I agree. This is coming from a Notre Dame fan. I agree on both sides of it. I think that's a tough one too, is because Notre Dame's ranked higher, but it goes back to the college football problem to start with. They were ranked higher to start. Like, so if you go down Indiana and Notre Dame, and they both started ranked 10 this year, Indiana would be the 3-4 spot that the Notre Dame's ranked at, and Notre Dame would be behind them, probably by a spot or 2. But you're not wrong on the fact that they would have been pulled up. But I don't think Notre Dame's getting as much special privilege as a lot of people want to make, because they dropped to 7 and kept Texas in front of them, even the fact that Texas lost their championship game, which that's the whole point. Notre Dame doesn't have a championship game, so Texas and Penn State both stay in front. Penn State stayed in front of them, and Texas stayed in front of them with that loss because they played in championship games against top teams, so they shouldn't fall behind Notre Dame, who doesn't have one. And that's actually the thing, is Notre Dame can never, I don't know if you knew that, they can never have a bye, at least in this format. They will, even if they went 12-0, can't have a bye because they don't have a championship.
Well, that's what you get for not playing in a conference and trying to be a real big deal.
You tell me if you would do this. You run a school where you get 100% of the TV deal?
Oh, I would run it the same way as Notre Dame. I agree with you. And get this giant TV deal and have movies made about me and really live off the glory of being great in 1892. It's fantastic stuff for Notre Dame. I get
Can
it.
I say something real quick?
I get the economics behind it, but you also can't bitch that you don't get a bye because you
No.
refuse to join a conference.
No, I'm not bitching at all. Like Notre Dame has no leg to stand on, and if they would have fallen to 10, like it's still fine. You're playing a game, whatever it might be. But I can tell you right now, even as a Notre Dame fan, I'm about to tune out until this game happens because I do not want to listen to Hoosiers versus Rudy for the next 2 weeks.
Notre Dame's just too much, man. I would prefer Alabama be in the playoffs and have Notre Dame in there.
Nah, that's too you bridge too far there.
No, just no. I mean, you say that Alabama people are the Cowboys people and the Yankees people. Notre Dame is that team for college football. Like anyone who doesn't know anything about college football just likes Notre Dame.
I don't think that's the case anymore. That's the case 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't think it is anymore.
I mean, you might be right. Like your 18 to 22-year-olds might be all in on Alabama as like the new generation of that team. But the previous 70 years, it was Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah. All the Tim Andercusts of the world. Yeah.
I got a few friends. Paul's another one who loves Notre Dame. I mean, basically, if you're a Catholic, you like Notre Dame. Like that was ingrained in you.
I'm not Catholic.
No, Paul is. Like Paul comes from a big Catholic family, so they all like Notre Dame.
Okay. I think it has to do with also if you're a 90s kid, there was a lot. You're not wrong in the fact, like, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Yankees fans are Notre Dame fans too. Like the 90s kid, although Yankees weren't very good in the 90s. So early 2000s, that range when Notre Dame was always in the title contention, and it is because we didn't have all these conferences making their moves at that point. So.
And you had all the negative coverage of Miami, who was also good during the early 90s. The Yankees were great in the later part of the 90s. From 96 to 2000, I hear they won a bunch of World Series.
I think they have a couple in there.
Yeah, they have 4 in a row.
Yeah, that's why I was saying closer to 2000.
Yeah, but it's no different than like the weird nostalgia people have for like Charlotte Hornets like starter jackets and Georgetown Hoyas T-shirts.
Dude, when did you see those stupid NBA Cup courts this year?
Oh yeah, the same as last year. I love the NBA Cup courts.
So somebody asked me to rank the top 10 this year, and I actually I put the Charlotte Hornets inside my top 10 because it reminded me of Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning and the freaking NBA Jam. Like those were awesome. Give me a starter jacket right now.
People had those jackets. It didn't matter where in the world you lived. Those Charlotte Hornet jackets were everywhere.
Oh, well, and I'm in Virginia Beach, so we're not even that far. There were a ton of them around here. I actually had a kid in high school. My buddy can back me up on this. I'm not sure he took off his Bulls starter jacket the entire year.
That's awesome. Did it stink?
Like the white was like, I don't know, the white was like brown by the end of the year.
Gross.
Yeah.
All right, Jake, at theathletic.com, are you still doing waiver wires and all that for the fantasy playoffs?
Yep, all the way through. The very last week 18 that you take off, and I wish I could, I would do a combined waiver and rankings because it's only relative to the people that are doing maybe a one-off. I don't know why you do these things.
Oh, I totally forgot. I have to run the Monday night play by you now. 2 in a row on this show on Monday night. We won last week. Using code Mayo, you could have added on another pick to juice it up to 6-1. The one I got today is almost 7-1. If you use code Mayo and sign up for Underdog right now, you will get a Joe Burrow free pick, and you can boost this up to either 12-1 or 13-1, I think. But here's what I have. I have 2 overs and an under. I have Chase Brown higher than 23.5 receiving yards in this game. I'm thinking you get Micah Parsons chasing around Joe Burrow, a little quick dump offs. Only takes 1 for Chase Brown to break that. There's 1. Let's lock that one in. CeeDee Lamb, it lost for me on Thanksgiving, but I am going back to it higher than 1.5 rushing yards.
I'm good with that.
He's hit it in 8 of 9 games. He's hit the over in that by a pretty substantial margin.
To go back to Chase Brown, though, like, hasn't he blown past that in, like, the last, basically since Zach Moss got his neck injury?
Yeah, I think there was one where he didn't. Let's see. Chase Brown.
I feel like...
I guess the thinking would be that they're big favorites in this game.
30 in the last game.
30 would be the higher. Yeah, in the past 4 games, it's 23.5. So 30 is the lowest he's had in the past 4 games.
My brain went sideways on that because it went 32.5 in my. So yeah, 37, 52, 57, 30. Like that feels like a low line.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's one you can put in along with CD Lamb, higher 1.5 rushing yards. And here's the one that's going to bite me because you just know it is. Cooper Rush, lower than 1.5 rushing attempts.
You love attacking Cooper Rush.
I do. He doesn't run much.
No. What? Nothing on T. Higgins?
No.
I feel like he's still disrespected.
Maybe. I mean, there's probably different ways you can do it. Maybe I'll make a 5-legger or a 4-legger, which you can add that Burrow free pick to if you use code Mayo. But let's see here. Yeah, actually 5 rushing attempts against the Giants on. That was a game that they won, though. Games they could play from behind. It's although he's beat this number in 4 straight games. I still like the lower, though. I just don't think he's going to run.
You're like, no, it's not happening.
I actually should have went lower rushing yards now that I look at it because he's been below 2 rushing yards in every game except one.
No. By the way, as we get out of here, to reference something at the beginning of the show, that was your full picks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Isaac Orendo apparently, quote unquote, just precautionary that he left the game.
Oh, okay. That's good news.
That is good news.
If you got Correndo, I suppose you could feel okay.
You feel good, firing right back up.
Yeah. All right.
And Raheem Morris came out and said, Kirk Cousins is our quarterback, which means he's probably getting benched because that's what happened. Who was the one that happened before that where they're like, it's not happening. He's our quarterback. And then
Wasn't
like
it-
2 days later, the switch happened.
Wasn't it DeVito? That's because he got hurt, though.
No, it was somebody else. Like legitimately, like
was it Richardson?
Yeah, it was the Joe Flacco. We were sticking with Joe Flacco, and then 2 days later, it's like, we're going back to Anthony Richardson.
Makes a ton of sense. At All In Kid is where you can find Jake on X and at theathletic.com for all of his work. I'm at the PME. You smash a like, you sub to the channel, and you use code Mayo at Underdog right now to get yourself that deposit bonus and a free pick. All right, we got a ton of Island games coming up over the holiday season, so you might as well get in. Go $10 a game. It'll be fun. Try to win a bunch of money because we've been hitting some pretty good picks over the last week. Hopefully, we can make it 3 in a row on Monday Night Football. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience. Experience.